Hi everyone, my name is Daryl. So I'm in the process of searching for a used Jeep Wrangler. And no, unfortunately this beautiful red one isn't mine. I'm going to go ahead and create a series of videos that document my process that'll help you in your search for a Jeep Wrangler. So in today's video, I'm going to basically be discussing the various generations of Jeep Wranglers. This particular one is actually a 2018 and it's what's considered a JK. And I'll be talking about why you might want to choose one generation over another. A special thanks goes out to Chapman, Las Vegas, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, and Ram. They provided this JK for us to look at today, and they've also agreed to provide resources in creating this video series that will help future Jeep owners in finding the perfect used Jeep Wrangler. All right, so let's get into the different generations of Jeeps. We're going to focus on the TJ, the JK, and the JL. Now, these acronyms, they're not something that owners just made up. They're actually how Jeep refers to the generations of Jeeps that come off the assembly line. So let's go ahead and talk about the TJ first. The TJ was produced from 1997 to 2006, and it was very much an old school Jeep. It only came in 2 doors, and it was a lot smaller than the JK equivalent. The TJ had a very reliable engine built by AMC, and a lot of Jeep owners really consider this engine to be the standard or the best Jeep engine because of its low end torque and because of how reliable that engine was. Now, I did spend some time in a couple of TJs, and because that's one of the vehicles I was really considering initially because of the low cost. And I can tell you they're a little bit rough around the edges. And what I mean by that is they are loud, first of all. So if you want a nice, quiet, comfortable ride, you're not gonna get a TJ. I mentioned comfort. The suspension in the TJs was not great. It had a very short wheelbase. So I talked about the 4-liter engine with some veteran Jeep owners, and they kind of compared the 4-liter engine to a tractor. So, you know, down low and at low speeds, if you need to pull a tree stump out of the ground, it'll do great. But if you try to take that tractor and you try to get on the freeway with it, well, you're gonna have some difficulties. And as far as creature comforts goes, well, the TJ doesn't have very many of them. And I don't think any of them came with power windows. It wasn't very comfortable inside, not a lot of soft points for your arms on the armrest. And so, yeah, the TJ is just very raw. And if that's what you're looking for, so perhaps this is gonna be your first Wrangler and you don't have a whole lot of money and you really, just wanna drive it around town and also take it off-roading, especially because of its small wheelbase. It makes a really good off-roading vehicle, but it just doesn't make it a great daily driver. Now you can find TJs for, anywhere between $6,000 and $10,000 depending on the condition of it. The one thing I will say about the TJs is they were very susceptible to rust. And so if you do find a TJ, if it's from back east where they get a lot of snow, a lot of salt on the roads, you really need to be careful and look underneath the frame and to check for rust. So now let's talk about what we have in front of me, which is the JK. So the JK was introduced in 2007, and there were tons of differences between the TJ and the JK, but one of the biggest and most obvious ones was basically the size. So the JK actually looks very similar to modern Jeeps nowadays. But the biggest change was the TJ only had 2 doors, whereas the JK has 4 doors, and they call it the JKU, or the unlimited version of the Jeep. The engine in the JK actually didn't change all that much from the TJ. So it went from a 4-liter V6 to a 3.8-liter V6. Now, a lot of owners who switched from the TJ to the JK, they complained about the engine being underpowered, and probably more of that was due to the significant weight of the JK versus the TJ, as well as the transmission. But I will say the 3.8-liter engine on the early JKs from 2007 to 2011 were a relatively reliable engine. They do have some oil burning issues, but other than that, it was a pretty reliable engine. But a lot of people will complain that it's a little bit slow. So another big difference in the JK was how it felt on the road. So the TJ, as I mentioned before, had a relatively short wheelbase, whereas the JK, it has a much longer wheelbase, especially if you're looking at the four-door model. The suspension on the JK was much improved for highway driving, and it also improved quite a bit for being off-road as well. So the other improvements on the JK come with the interior. Because the JK is significantly larger than the TJ, both in width and in length, and because of the four doors, the interior is much more roomy and more comfortable. There's a lot more storage space in the JK. Also, there's more amenities as well. So the TJ was just so bare bones. In the JK, you have modern features like power windows. It's not a luxurious cabin, but certainly it's a lot more comfortable than your TJ. I think overall the JK from 2007 to 2011 is greatly improved over the TJ. Now, a lot of veteran Wrangler owners out there might disagree with me simply because they love the rawness and the simplicity of the TJ, and they also just love that 4-liter engine. In 2012, Jeep introduced the Pentastar 3.6-liter V6, which is a huge change. The 3.6 is a modern dual overhead cam engine making 285 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque. And it made it so much quicker than the 3.8-liter it replaced. So the 0 to 60 times went from 10 seconds in the 3.8 to 7.5 seconds with the 3.6. And so, not that you really buy a Jeep Wrangler for speed, but being able to effortlessly merge onto the freeway is really appreciated. So in addition to the engine improvements in 2012, Jeep also made some interior improvements. So inside the interior, it's just more comfortable. The armrest on the door is more of a soft material, as well as the center console armrest. And you also have improvements with the multimedia system, as well as an enhanced vehicle information center. Now, actually these improvements were done in 2011, but it just makes sense since they updated the engine in 2012 that you kind of put those two things together. But I guess if you don't want the more modern engine, but you just want some of the interior improvements, you could consider a 2011. Now, of course, whenever you introduce a new engine, or a new generation, as a matter of fact, you're gonna likely have some problems, and Jeep is not immune to this. So when that 3.6 Pentastar came out, initially they had some issues with the cylinder heads. Basically, they extended the warranty on the left bank to 10 years and 150,000 miles. Now, of course, that's long past, and so any 2012 or 2013 Jeep that you're considering getting right now, that's not going to be available to you. But you should know that they did revise the cylinder heads in mid-2013, and you could probably check if you're purchasing a Jeep to see if that particular model had the revised cylinder heads. So in addition to the cylinder head problems, Jeep had a similar problem with the rocker arms. And the rocker arms, the symptom of that is some loud ticking noise when the engine is running. And this affected models all the way from 2012 to mid-2014 when the rocker arms were revised. And Jeep did not do any sort of extended warranty or recall on this particular issue. So it's certainly something, if you are buying a used Jeep, you might want to consider checking to make sure that you don't hear any sort of ticking noise, or also consider just getting a mid-2014 model or later. So just to reiterate, if you are considering getting a used JK Wrangler, my advice to you is to get a 2014 or later, probably mid-2014, as those models will have the revised cylinder heads as well as the revised rocker arms. You can find a 2015 or later JK Wrangler with about 75,000 miles on it for probably around $25,000. In 2018, Jeep introduced the new generation of the Wrangler called the JL. Now, It's a little confusing because in 2018, Jeep actually sold both the JK and the JL at the same time. So if you are purchasing a 2018 and you want a JK or a JL, you're going to want to make sure which one you're getting. Probably the easiest way to tell the difference between the two is on the JL. The grille around the headlights is a little bit curved, and also there's some integrated turn signals, and also on the JL is an 8-speed automatic transmission. The JL had improvements in both on-road and off-road performance. The biggest on-road improvements that they had really have to do with fuel efficiency, as they introduced their new 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine that had greater torque across the engine band and also increased fuel efficiency. Now, the V6 Pentastar engine still was included, but there was some improvements in the Pentastar engine as well that increased the reliability and durability of the engine. And Jeep also introduced the 8-speed automatic transmission, which for both engines also increased fuel efficiency. Now, there were some aerodynamic changes as well as changes in the weight, which further increased fuel efficiency across the board. So Jeep also made a number of improvements in the JL that helped with off-road performance. They upgraded the bumper to make it more durable and also to increase departure angle. They increased the size of the fender flares that allow for larger tires to be included. Actually, on the Rubicon models, they include 33-inch tires that can be upgraded without any modifications to 35-inch tires. And they also included more rugged Dana 44 axles. Lastly, Jeep made a number of improvements to the interior on the JL. So I didn't mention this, but the JL is a little bit larger in both width and length than the JK model that it replaced. And so you've got a little more cargo space and a little more interior space. Also, they upgraded the infotainment Uconnect system from basically a decade-old system. So the screens are much larger and now include smartphone integration. There's a lot to like about the new JL, but getting a JL over a JK, it's going to cost you a lot more. So, like I said, 2018, they made both JKs and JLs. And so if I compare a similarly equipped JK versus a JL with the same amount of miles, it's going to cost you about $5,000 more. So for me, I just don't think there's enough improvements to justify the cost, but ultimately, it's going to be your decision on which model that you get. So which generation of Wrangler do you think I'm looking for? Well, you probably guessed it. I'm going to be looking for a JK, and I'm going to be looking for one that's 2015 or newer. And of course, the reason for this is I want one with the revised cylinder heads and the revised rocker arms. Now I'm going to be looking for one that has about 75,000 miles or less, and hopefully $20,000 or less. I know it's going to be tough to find one, a really good Wrangler at that inexpensive of a cost, but you get to join me for my journey. So, which Wrangler do you want? Do you want the TJ? Do you want the JK? Or do you want the JL? Go ahead and put in the comments what generation of Wrangler that you're looking for, but ultimately it's probably going to be based on your budget and what you can afford. All right, so now that you figured out the generation of Wrangler that you want, now you need to figure out which model of Wrangler do you want. Do you want the Sport? Do you want the Sport S? Do you want the Sahara? Do you want the Rubicon? In my next video, we'll discuss those different models and why one might be more important than another one. And we'll also be looking at the different accessories and the packages that you can get for your Jeep. If you got some value in this video, please like it. And also, if you're enjoying this series, please consider subscribing to my channel. And I hope to see you in the next one again very soon.
I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago, but all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back